representation from literature, culture, and society. Well, in this tragic situation of pandemic, when most of us are confined to our homes, education or the access to knowledge has been forced to undergo a paradigm shift. It is snatched away from the public classrooms and restricted within the domestic space. However, with the rapid increase and development in digital technology and where work from home is the new normal, so under such circumstances, the Internal Quality Assurance Cell and the Department of English of Netaji Subhash Mahavidyalaya have collaborated to organize a 2-day national webinar under the tutelage and patronage of our respected principal, Sir Dr. Torun Bandyopadhyay. The main aim of this webinar is to furnish an exposure to our thought process, which has been quite clustered within the narrow walls of our homes and the boundaries of containment zones. Since the declaration of lockdown by our Honorable Prime Minister and Chief Minister way back in the month of March, questions have been raised about the notion of domesticity and shifting gender roles. Whereas men seem to help their wives in the daily household works, which has been quite designated as quote-unquote womanly works or codes, we have recently witnessed the sacrifice, dedication, and deaths of many female heroes who are fighting on the front line of the combat against this deadly virus. The question regarding women and gender has been perturbing the patriarchal psyche, the consciousness, and the heterosexual fabric of our society since the last few centuries. While there has been an increasing in the number of cases of hostility and oppression against women, we live in a country where the nation is equated with the woman and worshipped as the motherland, which Sugata Bose has termed as the mother complex. On the other hand, there are numerous women who have led social revolution and protests against the patriarchal authority, sidelining their male counterparts. Keeping these aspects in view, we have tried to focus our academic discussion on the emerging trends regarding the discourse concerning women, gender, and nation. Today, we have two eminent speakers with us. Professor Gautam Ghoshal from Vishwabharati Shantiniketan will speak on the concept of new woman, and Dr. Aparna Singh from Diamond Harbour Women's University will highlight the issue of Dalit women authors. But before going deep into the discussion, I would like to request our principal, Sir, Dr. Torun Bandyopadhyay, for the welcome address. Sir, are you there? Over to you.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Hello, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are
audible.
Yes, continue.
Yes, sir, you are.
Continue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and a hearty welcome to you all. Actually, today is the second day of the webinar. Yesterday, we had two eminent speakers, Professor Kusum Kumar Sharma from Gurukul Kangri Vishwavidyalaya, Uttarakhand, who talked on moods of the nation during COVID-19, and Professor Shaunak Samazdar, who delivered his speech on engendering representation, the realities and ironies. Dear participants, your cooperation and active participation during question hour made our sessions more lively and fruitful. I express my sincere thanks to you all. Today, we have another two eminent speakers. I cordially welcome them and express my sincere thanks and regards for being associated with us in this platform. Professor Gautam Ghoshal, Professor of English, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan, is a very well known name in the field of literature, not only in India but also in abroad. Professor Ghoshal has authored numerous articles and good number of books on his areas of interest both at national and international level. Apart from Tagore and Sri Aurobindo, his areas of interest include 19th century British and American literature, Shakespeare's poetry, and Rabindra Sangeet. We are really proud to be associated with him. As a key speaker of today's program, he will deliver his lecture on Dialogue with Death, Savitri as a New Woman. Sir, I cordially welcome you. Our second speaker, Dr. Aparna Singh, Assistant Professor of Diamond Harbour University, will speak on a very pertinent issue. The title of her lecture, Negotiating Caste and Gender, Dalit Women's Author. I think this lecture will give us a separate flavor. From the core of my heart, I welcome you, Madam. Once again, I welcome all participants and our well-wishers, hoping a very fruitful and lively discussion from the speakers and active support and participation and cooperation from our participants from various parts of the country. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words of wisdom. Now, I would like to request Professor Gautam Kusal, sir, for his deliberation. Sir, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, yes, you are audible and we can all see you. Please continue your discussion.
So at the very outset, I would like to thank the principal of the college, Professor Torun Bandyopadhyay, for kindly inviting me to speak on an area which is my favorite, and also to Rajraj Mukhopadhyay, who is in fact a very good scholar and a very good human being. So I also express my thanks to him, to both of you, for calling me to speak a few words on Sri Aurobindo's epic, one part of the epic, not the whole one because it is too vast. I would focus on just the dialogue with death that comes in Book 10, Chapter 3, 4. And it is the most dramatic book of the epic. And I would always suggest this part to be the part of the syllabus because this is the most interesting as poetry, as poetic drama, and as something which is needed for the whole of humanity. Because we are disintegrated, but we have to live a life of integrity, and man is important because heaven we have already conquered. But what about this planet? This is the main issue of Sri Aurobindo's epic, that heaven we have already conquered, but what about changing the nature of the earth? Can you hear me? Can you hear me all?
Yes, yes. We can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, so I will divide the talk into three parts. First, I will briefly speak of the concept of new woman, which was arguably termed by Sarah Grant in 1894 in an article. But there are others who have used the term, and it is now a controversy who used it first. But I go back to the late 1870s and then in 1882, when Henry James wrote his novel Portrait of a Lady. my theoretical framework is Henry James's novel Portrait of a Lady, where we have a character called Isabel Archer. He is referred to by Henry James as the new woman. Now, this is the theoretical part, but there is no unified definition of new woman. The blacks also have claimed them to be new woman. And so, and almost simultaneously, Henry James a little earlier. So, there are many roles for the new woman, not just one role. And this diversified role is important. And we come to Sri Aurobindo's epic just to show how relevant Sri Aurobindo is to these new movements. Well, of course, we compare them with an Indian because there are two makers of Indian tradition, Rabindranath Tagore and Sri Aurobindo. They have spoken of the whole thing, the whole stuff, taking here and there both, and also a completeness of life which they seek. Now, because my audience I know is not aware of the theme of Savitri, so in my second part I will speak of a little of something like a gist of the epic. Now, Sri Aurobindo started writing it many years back in Baroda, and it was 50 years agroing. And at different times he took it up, and as he rose to a new level of consciousness, he would like to revise his epic. So it was written for more than 50 years. 50 years are the minimum time, but it could be more than 50 years that he was in it, and it is his magnum opus. And it is in a way more clear than the Life Divine, which is a bit difficult for the initial reader. But Savitri is poetry, and it is majestic poetry, it is attractive poetry, and it is it accommodates the lyric within the epic, drama within the epic, and as in the book of in the dialogue between love and death, it will be the climax of drama. Now, what is the epic about? The story in the Mahabharata runs to only 600 lines, and it is simply a story of conjugal love. Now, when Sri Aurobindo started taking it, he was drawn to the names of the characters, and he found that behind the names there are hidden in the history of humanity, lost in the history of humanity, some clues to what they meant. Like Satyavan is the man who carries the truth. Satyam Bahati Iti. And Savitri is the splendor, the daughter of light. In the Vedic scripture, they would call her Gayatri, the daughter of light. Ashtapati, Savitri's father, is the Lord of Force, tremendously powerful. Only the Lord of Force can give birth to the daughter of light. And then Satyavan's father is blind, Dumat Sena. Dumat is shining, Sena is host, shining host. He is blinded, he comes to the earth to get back his sight. Now, these are the clues Sri Aurobindo found initially in the when he started digging out, and ultimately the 600 lines turned into the long verse epic in English literature. 23,813 lines, In the corrected version, it becomes 809. There's a controversy about the text because many people do not like these corrections on Sri Aurobindo's own text. So they would prefer, I myself prefer Sri Aurobindo's own text and not the corrections. So this is the history, and what is this woman doing on earth? Because in the very opening of the epic, to pre-creation darkness, it was the hour before the gods awake, and it was all dark. Fathomless zero occupied the world. Darkness upon darkness, layers of darkness. And then throughout the history of humanity, Sri Aurobindo says at one place in his interpretation of the Veda that it could be more than 10,000 years old, not 3,500 years old. And recently NASA has caught a breach. Myth is life, is history. The new historians, the left historian, claim that myth is not history, but is history. Our technology, through our science, we explore these myths and we find what happened many, many thousand years ago. Now, this was the lost story which he took up to reveal what was hidden there. And this is the concept of a woman. Now, speaking of Sri Aurobindo, let me tell you, first time who claimed it in this difficult and disturbing world, and is sidelined because of that, because he claims that the major three texts ascribed to the Hindus are not only by name Hindu texts, but the audience is humanity. That is why we have so many Muslim and Christian devotees of Sri Aurobindo, because the Vedas, the Upanishads, and even the Gita is not a sectarian text. So this is the first thing which we have to remember, that there is nothing of Hindu here. Well, Hindu is a name to characterize a civilization. Even Vivekananda was known as a Hindu monk, but he was trying to revive an old heritage. And very unfortunately, he is still called a Hindu monk, but actually he was trying to revive an old culture, very old, which was addressed to humanity. So, this is the audience of Sri Aurobindo, not the Hindus, but the entire humanity is Sri Aurobindo's audience. Nothing of the sectarian in his major texts. And these three texts, the concept of the eternal feminine, was there in Christianity. Because it's a misconception that the Vedic texts were patriarchal and the Tantric texts were matriarchal. It's wrong, because in many texts of the Vedas, just like in the Rig Veda, there are references to Saraswati as the mother of inspiration. Like in Greece, it is Hippocrene and Pegasus. So we have Saraswati as the mother of inspiration. And this has nothing to do with religion. It's an absolutely spiritual concept for all. And that is why Christianity has also the concept of mother worship. This is an epic about the cosmic woman who is waiting to come down on earth to try the errors of humanity and mankind. These divides, disharmonies, tribes, to change the entire consciousness of humanity so that there is no division And it sounds like utopia, but it is a reality because we have to walk step by step up in the ladder of consciousness from the brute to the mediocre to the elite in terms of spirituality, not in terms of religion, because religion, Sri Aurobindo says, is obsolete. The age of religion is over. So here is a conscious force or a cosmic woman force who is leaning down on earth to save humanity. And this woman is not interested in winning glories for her. She is a new woman in the sense that, like Isabel Archer in the Portrait of a Lady, she is an explorer. In Portrait of a Lady, Isabel says, I will see, I will explore. And all the moments there are as the woman as an agent of transformation. The woman as a force, which Sri Aurobindo calls conscious force or consciousness force. And sometimes he calls it the magnet of a difficult ascent, chumbak. In Christianity also, and most probably in other scriptural texts, there could be this concept of the World Mother leaning down on earth. Now she has a role to play, not the victory of heaven, because heaven already conquered. She has come to change the earth, to transform, and to make a new race beyond man, because
Sir, please unmute yourself, sir. Someone muted you.
muted me. Okay. Now it's okay?
Yes, sir.
Archer. She is a free being for the first time in literature. In modern literature, in the late Victorian literature, Henry James introduces a lady who wants to explore, to see for herself without the aid of others. In The Doll's House, there's an interesting dialogue translated by Somu Mitro. আমি বলে দেবো, তুমি সেই মতো চলবে. This is not that. There's no dictation. Because in a major text called War and Termination, Aurobindo refuses to accept patriarchy and he says patriarchy must go immediately. Because the old concept of patriarchy, the child as the property of the father, must go immediately. And the woman as a property of the husband must go immediately. With these views, we are aware of these views. Now, what does Savitri do in the dialogue with death? It's a great dialogue and very engaging dialogue. And as T.S. Eliot calls of poetry which is emotion and action at the same time, which is emotion and it is pushing the action. And speech and action must be interpenetrated. Speech and action must be interpenetrated in drama. Then it will be a poetic drama. Now, there are passages in this dialogue when the dialogues are a bit too long. But don't think this is a Tagorean dialogue. Because Tagore was thinking of a new form of drama, entirely a new form of poetic drama. And Sri Aurobindo's tradition is Shakespeare and Sophocles, the true playwrights of yesteryears. The only difference between Vijay Tendulkar's speeches and Sri Aurobindo's speeches in Dialogue with Death is that the speeches are a bit too long. But the most interesting thing is that within the speeches of the Lord of Death, and Savitri, within the speeches, there is drama, dramatic interactions, conflicts. Not that Death and Savitri are in conflict, but within the speeches of Savitri, within the speeches of the Lord of Death, there are conflicts. In their addresses, they contain a great thought for future humanity, how to shape the future humanity, how to make a world full of harmony. And of course, individuality, freedom is extremely important for this world. Variation of worship. Sri Aurobindo repeatedly says that not one form of worship should be there, not one form of nation, because this variety will be the basis of future civilization, future poetry, future life, future marriage, future mating. This variety will be there. No two men will speak alike. No two women will speak alike. So this is the great freedom that we find. And if you see this dialogue, that first Savitri takes up a journey like Isabel Archer. She comes from America to England, taking a voyage, and she continues her voyage of discovery. Savitri too. Savitri too. Savitri too continues this journey inward, exploring both the problems outward and inward, not just inward. And to be frank with you, Sri Aurobindo never left politics. He never left life. It is a wrong concept that Sri Aurobindo left Kolkata in search of a distant God, in search of a lonely freedom, isolation. He was involved, committed. His last speech was 3 months before his passing. He told an MP that China would be divided into 3 parts. That was his prophecy. So he was in politics. So this spirituality is not a spirituality of the old days, not the true spirit of the old spirituality, right? And unlike Gandhi, Tagore and Sri Aurobindo says technology and science are important. We can't go back to the village to make a village, a decorative village, but the village must contain hospitals, post offices, and all the basic amenities along with nature. So this is the difference between Gandhi and Tagore and Sri Aurobindo, that they speak of, they accept science and technology. Only they advise technology and science not to be over-intrusive into the subjectivity of man. So this is a very interesting epic, and I have focused on just one part where there's a great dialogue running in book 10. It's an engaging dialogue, and I said I always prescribe this for the masters or for the MPhil texts. Death is also a symbol of patriarchy, because if you read the interaction, the debate, the tussle of words, the interaction, the drama, you will notice that death is standing as a voice of patriarchy and always belittling Savitri's power. You woman, what can you do? You little woman. That is where Sri Aurobindo comes out with his idea. This little woman is of tremendous, unthinkable force, without which you can't do. And when Savitri wins and dies and defeats Lord of Death, You win it for all, for the families, because creation is a joint adventure. So you can easily relate, counter react, and sometimes find relations with Alice Walker's idea of womanism, with Sri Aurobindo's idea as expressed in the dialogue with death. So death is a symbol of patriarchy. Raj, will you allow Sharoni to join? Hello, Raj.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please share the link with her.
Sharoni wants to join.
Okay, please share the link with her.
I have shared the link.
Okay, okay, okay. The admin will allow her.
Okay. So death is the voice, the dominating voice of the death. Sri Aurobindo's rhetoric, if you notice Sri Aurobindo's rhetoric, it is the voice of patriarchy. It is a man speaking to woman. Touch not the secret lines, with a directive verb. এখানে এসো না, পৌঁছো না. Don't touch the line beyond your border. So limiting the place for women, the idea from the Lord of Death. Actually, he is falsity, but he is hiding the reality within himself. He is tasting, but he stands as the voice of patriarchy. Touch not these seed lines. Go beyond. Don't go beyond this. You are a woman, he indicates. So in reader response theories, you will see that the readers are responding to a text as they like. So no devotee of Sri Aurobindo will enjoy my talk today, because I am not speaking in the line of devotion. I am speaking in the line of literature, critical literature, and it is a different thing apart from spirituality, which is there. There is a strong battle between patriarchy, between the female and the male, where the female does not deny the male, but defeats the male and wins him back and makes him her equal. Notice my argument. Here the female defeats the male, wins him back, and makes him her equal, neither superior nor inferior, because it's a walk of togetherness, and both are equally powerful, both have something to contribute. This is the new concept of woman, of the future woman, not just the new woman. You have the concept of the future woman, of which Sri Aurobindo speaks. And death is here trying to frustrate this feminist movement. If you go by reader response theory, if you're not a bhakta of Sri Aurobindo, then it is Aurobindo as a writer, as a poet, as a critic, a dramatist. And here he is trying to imprison the female with sex and lust. These are the two things with which patriarchy dominates them, and children. And so Savitri catches his clever proposal. He says, no, I am here to win back the entire humanity for the world, and for the earth, I want to change the earth. I don't want my personal glory. So here you have the woman as the leader, the captain, the executive. The mother has called the woman as the true executive. If we are given the position of a headship, you will see how difficult it is to run a headship as a man. But a female does it so accurately, so neatly. We can't reach out there, their perfection of work. So we need this perfection. As male, we cannot deny this. And all the time, Savitri is demanding the respect from the Lord of Death. That no, you can't underestimate me as a little woman. So then, as a way of tasting, the Lord of Death tells Savitri to show her force. Then she reveals herself. And quite often we don't know this is a reality. This is a reality, and you will see again and again how in your personal life, in our personal lives, you are saved by your partner, friend, by your female friend. Always with the new intelligence, always with a new power, equal in might, maybe a bit varying, but equal. So finally, she just reveals herself a great force, a fire. And this fire is going to leak out patriarchy. And he runs away. But after he runs away, or his running away is a signal that it is time for patriarchy to go in the context of the new woman who is here to explore. And the contraries will be there. All contraries prepare for harmony. Man, woman, contrary is inevitable necessity, the law of nature, and it has to be there, but it has to be ultimately harmonized, and the new woman as future woman also speaks of that. So it will be something like defeating patriarchy in his own territory. Because Yama is the Lord, Savitri has entered into his territory, defeating him on his own ground, and then not rejecting the male. But she asks, she says, I am a deputy of the aspiring world, and I seek not my personal liberty. As the mother has said, women are born executors. So this is the work, the execution which Prakriti makes. Purusha is here inactive. Without this activating force, it has no power. So in a beautiful drama, because I've said that he's not using the drama like Tagore, like Gandhari Abedan, where there is no tension, no interaction of speech, long passages. Here too you have long speeches, but even within the speeches there is tension, what T. Eliot calls the fusion of poetry and tension. That is the essence of poetic drama, and also the realistic dialogue which comes out of tension. So difference between silence the court is in session, because I have noticed that in many speeches in the silence in the court in session, in many speeches, speech is both poetry and action. It is concealed poetry. Similarly, here also you have that, but not that quick exchanges. There are long passages because it is also a doctrine that has to be revealed as poetry. Doctrine in it as imagination. Doctrine that will come as a new vision. So it will be long. But the interesting thing is that As drama, it is not a flop, but it follows exactly Eliot's theory of drama. Poetry and tension come together. And as Christopher Fry says in an article published in Vogue many years back, poetry in the theater is the action of listening. So it is this action that you see in this great debate. So always go for these two cantos. Everybody will be fascinated by Sri Aurobindo's poetry alone. You have to forget about the rishi, the sage, whatever name you may give him. He was not at all an alienated being. He was very much here, not at all there, very much rooted in the earth consciousness. And with this and his poetry and his drama, you will see that this is a new kind of poetry, a new kind of drama, and a new kind of idea of how to make a new species out of man. Because man is not final. In our mental knowledge, we think that man is the best. There is nothing beyond man. But biological science tells us that nature cannot be satisfied with an imperfect creation. It will always try to make a better creation. So a new species is in the offing, it is coming, and it will be hastened by the initiative of man. This is what Sri Aurobindo calls new creation. And this new creation, maybe 5% of the human race will be the leaders of humanity. Then, otherwise, whoever may be the politicians, whoever may be, whatever may be their political party, the same things will be repeated because man's consciousness has not changed. Strife, disharmony is inside. You can't live with your wife peacefully within yourself, in your room. Even if you have large rooms, 10 rooms, you can't live peacefully with your wife. With one person, you can't adjust. As Sri Aurobindo tells us that there are ways to find out this harmony, and this woman's force is extremely interesting, and it has to be invited. It has to be the leader of our consciousness, the lady of the voyage, we say, the captain of our being, so that we become equals and the entire notion of patriarchy is destroyed to make a new living existence of harmony, unity, where the human beings will live with the soul's brotherhood. Sri Aurobindo uses the phrase soul's brotherhood, not brotherhood. Brotherhood is a fake term. Sri Aurobindo says in the ideal of human unity that it should be a soul's brotherhood. Only then you can be united with the other. You won't hate the other. But at the same time, he says that there is a necessity for infinite variety, because this world is not Sankaracharya's Maya. It is Leela. It is a playfield of the divine. So you have to enjoy here, keeping the spirit intact and initiating the coming of the new race who will lead humanity from this dismal, will change this war-affected planet, these pollutions, ecological imbalance. Everything has to be sorted out only through the collaboration of man and woman. So as a new woman, Savitri is also the future woman. Traditionally, comes from Henry James's Isabel Archer, but she leaves behind Isabel Archer in search of greater things. And we have to know that in India we have masters. Well, we must worship Foucault and Kant. but not neglecting our Indian masters. Thank you for listening. Questions?
Thank you, sir. I would like to request the audience who are listening to our lectures to please reserve your questions for later. And I would now like to request Dr. Aparna Singh, who is an assistant professor of Diamond Harbour Women's University, to present her deliberation. Professor Singh has passed his postgraduate degree from Calcutta University, and she has been awarded her PhD degree in the year 2018 from Calcutta University. Her PhD thesis is titled Representing Dalit, Reading Insider-Outsider Narratives. She has presented papers in several international seminars and conferences. She has authored a handful of research papers and edited a book titled Exploration, Literary and Cultural, published by Poschimbango Ancholik Itihaস ও Lok Sangskriti Kendra in the year 2018. I would cordially like to invite Dr. Aparna Singh to present her lecture. Ma'am, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Raj Mukhopadhyay, and I would begin by thanking Department of English and IQAC of Netaji Subhash Mahavidyalaya, Dr. Tarun Bandyopadhyay, who has warmly invited me for this, for delivering this lecture. I'm really honored, and Professor Shamiul Azim, Professor Raj Mukhopadhyay, and my dear Mouna, who is like my younger sister, but I really look up to her for various things. The title of my topic is Negotiating Caste and Gender, Reading Dalit Women Authors. Now, before I begin with the Dalit women authors, I just wanted to read out a poem in Hindi by Om Prakash Valmiki, and it's a very simple poem, but it's a very hard-hitting poem, and I'm sure even those with not a very sound knowledge of Hindi would be able to, understand it. It's called Thakur Ka Kuan. चूल्हा मिट्टी का, मिट्टी तालाब की, तालाब ठाकुर का, भूख रोटी की, रोटी बाजरे की, बाजरा खेत का, खेत ठाकुर का, बैल ठाकुर का, हल ठाकुर का, हल की मूठ पर हथेली अपनी, फसल ठाकुर की, कुआं ठाकुर का, पानी ठाकुर का, खेत खलिहान ठाकुर के, गली मोहल्ले ठाकुर के, फिर अपना क्या, गांव, शहर, देश. The Dalit woman, you can well surmise where she stands. So I would just try, I would just want you to, just envisage the structured, stratified society which we inhabit, wherein we have the Savarnas, wherein we, of course, have the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, and then we have the untouchables who do not belong to the caste structure. And, of course, the Dalit woman stands even below this. He is the other's other, right? Now, the word social distancing has been so much in use nowadays. I mean, everybody is talking about social distancing, and I was really interested in the way people talked about it as physical distancing yesterday. So, social distancing is not something which Dalits have been unaware of. I mean, it was very much normal for them. What is a new normal for us was very much normal for them. They have always been distant from the rest of the society, and the idea of untouchability itself is based on the idea of distancing these people from the social rubrics of the society. Now, two observations got me thinking. One is a recent one and the other is not so recent. Not long ago, India Today snooped around some of the more fashionable bars in Mumbai and found what is defined as the modern Indian woman. Now, how do you define a modern Indian woman? And that's a very interesting question. I mean, I could think of myself as a modern Indian woman, and I could see the other women around me as modern Indian women. But here was a modern Indian woman who was, she was being sh- uh, showcased as somebody who is dressed for success, with a tequila in her hand, pointing the way to a liberated new century. Now, this wildly liberated woman forms one of the images of the new India that excites advertisers. I mean, if you look around yourself, if you kind of travel in the city, you will find these very attractive hoardings all around you, wherein women are presented in a particular way, and you'll find that these are the women who attract advertisers, marketers, and but if you look at how these women probably only are a niche, they represent maybe 5% of the Indian populace. Or if I'm too squeamish about the percentage, maybe it could be 10%, right? So these are women who have no relevance to most of the women in a country where a much publicized new middle class rests atop an often unrecognized mess of hundreds of millions of other Indians living in extreme deprivation. Most of these women are probably not even close to us in any sense. So now, this particular coverage of India today has really, set off a long chain of debates, and there are many people who have responded to it in a vitriolic manner, because they found it as very it kind of represents very few women of India. Now, the other instance or the other observation that I came across is a message that just popped on Women's Day, which is celebrated on 8th of March every year. And interestingly, that message created a false veneer of hope and happiness. It was a reality check for me also, and it ended with the rejoinder: "Do give your domestic help a day off." Now, this came as a surprise to me, because it awakened in me the woman, it awakened me to the woman who was integral to my life and yet seamlessly invisible. Rather, I had been completely blind to her existence as a woman who was very much like me, except for her class and caste. This blindness, which is mostly voluntary, is something that women's movement has been infested with. Now, Women's Day is about a particular class of women, a particular caste of women, middle class women who belong to a particular class and caste in terms of money and status. Now, it has also boiled down to buying costly cakes and flowers for these women by their men, and then a nonchalant dismissal of such attention on other calendar days. So the other calendar days, of course, do not matter much. Now, the Vikas Vanchit Dalit Mahila Parishad has proposed 25th of December as the celebration of Women's Liberation Day, as it was the day when Dr. Ambedkar burnt the Manusmriti. According to the Dalit Mahila Parishad, this is by far of greater relevance for Indian women than 8th of March, which we all know is the celebration of International Women's Day. So they find, and Dalit women have, vociferously voiced their preference for 25th of December. And of course, the reasons are not too far-fetched, because we understand that on this day, Ambedkar burnt the Manusmriti. And Manusmriti, as you know, is one of the founding texts for the caste stratification and division. In recent years, women's studies have appeared in many languages, Indian and foreign, with the focal point ranging from abortions of female fetuses to bride burning and the ideology of sati. But amazingly, there is little interest in Dalit women. Most of the women's studies concentrates on the middle class women, among whom very few are Dalits, because only an estimated 5 to 10% of Harijan women are able to lead a middle class life. Now, going back to the black women's assertion of their rights in the 19th century, they were caught in a double bind. Now, what was this double bind? Because they did not know whom to favor, and even if they favored the black men, they still had to continue with facing a lot of sexist oppression. And if they favored the white women, they would still have to be subject to racism. So they were caught between the black men and the white women, and they found that they had no voice, kind of being torn apart in these two directions, and ultimately they did not have a voice of their own. Now, one of the most radical black women uh, you know uh, activists, Sojourner Truth, has famously stated that there is a great stir about colored men getting the right to vote, but not a word. This is a quotation. So I'll just start again. There is a great stir about colored men getting the right to vote, but not a word about the colored women. And if colored men get the rights and not colored women theirs, you see the colored men will be masters over the women, and it will be just as bad as it was before. So she reminded the public that sexist oppression was as real as the racist. Now, racism and sexism is something which the black women were fighting against. And if you look at the Dalit women, you will find that they are also fighting against not just the high caste, the casteism, but they're also fighting against Dalit patriarchy. So if you look at the multiple layers of subjugation that she is constantly being subjected to, you will find that there are multiple layers. Of course, you have the upper caste woman, you have the upper caste man, the upper caste woman, and the Dalit man. So she kind of flounders somewhere down the line, and she is almost invisible. And these are the problems that Dalit women specifically have faced over the years. And the women's question seemingly has not been able to, the women's movement has not been able to voice their concerns. Now, I have prepared certain slides for you so that you will be able to see, and maybe the visual references will help you understand and give you a better picture. So with your permission, I just want to present a few slides. So is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it okay? So this was now this was what I was talking about: Dalit women as insiders or outsiders to women's movement. And so I will not look into it any further. Now, this is an interesting part which I want to look at, which is called Brahminical Patriarchy. Of course, patriarchy is something that we are all more or less familiar with and how it operates. But Brahminical Patriarchy, is something which I found really very interesting. And the idea of Brahminism kind of getting conjoined with the idea of patriarchy. Now, patriarchy not only subordinates women, it ensures that caste boundaries are not crossed. And how? How does this happen? The caste structures are perpetuated by controlling women's sexuality and restraining their interactions with other castes. Because you see, women became, as this was something even Ambedkar was talking about, that women come by controlling women, the caste boundaries are controlled, the caste boundaries are determined, and the caste boundaries are completely made inerasable. I mean, they cannot be erased at any cost. And these women are made to understand that they have to be chaste, they have to be pativratas, they have to be extremely conscious of remaining pure. So all these ideas become ingrained and internalized by women over the years, and that is why these women take it upon themselves not to cross these caste boundaries, and that is why they are made to they are made to think that no, I won't be attracted to a man of another caste. Women become gateway. They cannot have a friendship with other men of other castes. So these are the things that become internalized over the years, and I think you all are aware how the Khap Panchayat function even today, and how restrictive and controlling they are. The vigilantism of the Khap Panchayats, or even and even the the episodes of violence that we get to know and come across in our everyday reality. I mean, it's not something that is coming from the 18th century or 17th century way back in the past, and it was something remotely locked in some corner of tradition, but it's something that we get to know and hear of on an everyday basis. So this is where the caste system has this is how the caste system perpetuates itself, and the behavioral paradigms of women are completely restricted and conditioned and controlled by the women. Now, the whole of the complex structure of social status, economic reproduction, and social reproduction is contingent on what has been characterized, as I said, Brahminical patriarchy. Now, the honor of a caste is contingent on the purity of its internal behavior, and who has this onus of maintaining the purity of internal behavior? None other than the women. Now, it is a set of rules, institutions in which caste and gender are interlinked, and that is how I show the intersection of caste and gender. I mean, they are so interlinked, they are so invisible, and this is where Kimberly Crenshaw's idea of intersectionality becomes extremely relevant for us, because we cannot think of women as a homogeneous body anymore. There are women who are Dalit women, there are women who are lesbians, there are women who are mothers, there are women who are low class women. So there are so many segregations and heterogeneity which exist within the idea of womanhood itself. Woman as a homogeneous entity is something that needs to be questioned, and this is what third feminism was also looking into. Now, I just want to, quote from Uma Chakravarti, who has done some seminal work on gender and caste. This is a quotation from Uma Chakravarti. Under Brahminical patriarchy, women of the upper castes are regarded as gateways, literally points of entry into the caste system. The lower caste male whose sexuality is a threat to upper caste purity of blood has to be institutionally prevented from having sexual access to women of the higher caste. So such women have to be carefully guarded, and please mark the word carefully guarded. Herein comes all the discourses that we come across on people being killed, people being completely ambushed, or the violence that is perpetrated in the name of maintaining caste purity. So, of course, when a low caste woman is raped, the blame is squarely and conveniently placed on the unrestrained sexuality of the low caste woman. Of course, herein the idea of the upper caste woman and the low caste woman are clearly delineated around her sexuality, and whether and how she behaves in public. And when the high caste woman gets intimate with a low caste man, it is the latter who is painted with a rapacious, voracious sexuality, while the former is transgressive, dangerously audacious to have crossed the Lakshman Rekha. Okay, so I bring in the idea of Lakshman Rekha here, nothing like the typical chaste high caste woman. Now, we need to look at how Dalit women, ask different sets of questions. What kind of questions do Dalit women ask, and why is it that Dalit women cannot be seamlessly integrated with the high caste women or the women's movement, which is by far middle class high caste movement? Because they ask different questions, their problems are different, they cannot be put in the same bracket as the high caste women, which was also the case in during black feminism. Now, in the next slide, I would just draw your attention to one of very, very important Dalit authors, Bama Faustina. And Bama Faustina's Karuku was translated by Lakshmi Holmes and was a response to Dalit woman's perspective. Now, what the text writes is oppression contingent, which of course she addresses in her next text, Sanghi. And you see, this could have been very well written by a Dalit male author, because there are no references to the kind of exploitation women are subject to. And this is something which even Lakshmi Holmstrom observes. She quotes, nor indeed does Bama, again, unlike Vidiveli, make a connection between caste and gender oppressions. Not in Karuku at any rate. She does so abundantly in Sangati and elsewhere. Karuku is concerned with the single issue of caste oppression within the Catholic Church and its institutions, and presents Bama's life as a process of lonely self-discovery. And remember, even when Dalit feminism was kind of raising, finding a voice for itself, uh, there was even the Dalit woman category is not a homogeneous category. And you have the Dalit Christian woman, which also probably is relegated to the background in the Dalit women's movement. So the layers are multiple and extremely complex. Now, Baba mentions in Proof of Faith her need to break social codes and create a new social template to rebuild her disintegrated identity. And you can clearly see it on the slide. The driving forces that shaped this book are many. Events that occurred during many stages of my life, cutting me like karuku and making me bleed. Unjust social structures that plunged me into ignorance and left me trapped and suffocating. My own desperate urge to break, throw away, and destroy these bonds. And when the chains were shattered into fragments, the blood that was spilled, then all these taken together. There are other Dalit like mine with a passionate desire to create a new society made of justice, equality, and love. They who have been oppressed are now themselves like the double-edged Karuku, challenging their oppressors. Now, the narrative, as you can see, is a clarion call to all the Dalits who need to make themselves heard and fight against oppression. Sharmila Rege, who is an extremely important voice, and unfortunately, she passed away last year. She has a very seminal and very important book, Writing Caste, Writing Gender, which reads testimonials as counter narratives. Now, I'm not very sure whether you're aware and you've come across this word testimonial. It's not exactly an autobiography, but it of course falls within the autobiography. The testimonial is it's like an autobiography wherein the narrator places himself or herself within a collective identity. So it is not like I, in the sense that it's I alone who is important in the text, but the I is situated within a social cultural context. And also it is the participation of the reader is expected in a testimonial, so that these testimonials are important documents also. Of course, there has been questions raised as to their veracity and whether they are at all valid or not, but then they do serve as documents which become important in defining the kind of oppression and privations that Dalits go through, because they are first person narrations. Sharmila Rege reads the testimonials as counter-narratives that challenged selective memory and monolithic history, both of the Dalits and women's movements. These testimonials translate and legitimize acts of memory and history. Now, Dalit feminism, she asserts, is redefined through revitalization of history via memory. These acts of memory are acts of decentralizing established historical discourses and practices in a nation, keenly interested in forgetting or silencing them. Testimonials act as a crucial confluence between memory, history, and the narratorial rehabilitation of Dalit identities. Now, Rege, again I go back to Rege, she pertinently poses the following questions. I quote, how do Dalit women contest and redefine the upper caste definitions of their social status and that of their community? How do they view the institutions and practices prevalent in Indian society? Do they see the caste system as an irrevocable reality? What kind of struggles do they suggest for the annihilation of caste. What are the ways in which Dalit women resent, note their dissent against, and compromise with the Brahminical domination? She also says that the need to perceive gender relations within and outside the community through the Dalit woman's perspective is extremely important. And she also seeks to envision gender concerns within the Dalit community and not merely through the mediated discourse of a disassociated observer. Now, Karuku, as you've seen, negotiates this complicated and contested terrain of caste divisions. It does not delve into its gendered aspects. And if you look at the testimonials written by Marathi Dalit authors, you will find that caste discrimination, gender discrimination, not just caste discrimination, gender discrimination is an important not subtext, rather, it's an important text within the in these texts. So they are not kind of para texts. They are intrinsic to the narrative, gender oppression. Now, as Bama, she belongs to the Christian community, which foregrounds the debates related to conversions, and in the process underlines the deep-rooted dichotomies which bypass all negotiations based on religion and class. And Bama, maybe she does not talk about gender much in Karukku, of which of course she does in Sangati. She talks about the religious masquerades which were infiltrated by the Christian missionaries. So even if you converted to Christianity, you were still referred to as Dalit Christian woman. And it does unearth, the deceptions practiced in the name of religion. So religion, of course, had been seen as a way of escape, or rather a kind of a means to exonerate themselves, or to kind of shake off the ignominy of belonging to a particular caste. Does not give them the shield, does not give them the protection which they had been seeking. Now, I move on to the next slide, which is called the politics of representation. Now, Dalit women justify the need to talk differently to counter the homogenizing non-Dalit discourses and the patriarchal domination within the Dalits. Now, the politics of representation came to the fore, was foregrounded by this very interesting conversation in course, through articles and through dialogues which were taking place between Gopal Guru and Sharmila Rege and others also. So Gopal Guru talked about in his very, very well-known essay, Dalit Women Talk Differently. It is a seminal essay again. He is talking about the fact that Dalit women need to break out of this overarching women's discourse or overarching Dalit discourse. They need to talk differently. They need to be different. They have to show that their problems are different. So difference was one of foregrounding their difference or stating their difference was the only way in which they could assert their presence, or even if not assert, at least make themselves visible. Now, the autonomous mobilization of the Dalit women can also be understood from an epistemological position. And this was a very important point that he was making. And he said that this perspective maintains, I quote, the less powerful members of a society have a more encompassing view of social reality than others, because their disadvantaged position grants them a certain epistemic privilege over others. Now, this is interesting because if you belong to the margins, not only can you see the margin, you can also see the center from afar. So you can kind of understand the difference, and you can get a kind of a bird's eye view of how the differences operate, where are you positioned. So your position becomes clear to you, and you can talk about yourself in a better way. So you can not only see the center, but you can also see yourself and yourself in relation to the center. It has been noted though there are some non-Dalit women activists sensitive to the caste dimensions of women's exploitation, their stand has remained ambivalent regarding the critique of caste, and this is what Guru had clearly pointed out. But if you look at what Rege is stating in her response to this particular essay, she says that there might be an advantage from the vantage point of belonging to the margins in terms of expressing oneself or making your position understood, but completely disassociating yourself from the larger women's movement would kind of isolate you and may lead to narrow identitarian politics. And of course, the fact that there'll be ultimately these differences. One needs to put these differences within a social context. We cannot completely separate the differences from the social context which lead to these differences. So she's saying that it's not absolutely impossible to understand a non-Dalit woman from a Dalit woman from a non-Dalit perspective. And this can, of course, be possible by constructing a space of intervention. This, of course, has an idea of constructedness, which is not essentialist and homogeneous. So she is talking about this space, which, of course, would be like creating a space wherein you can make that leap of faith and empathize with the Dalit. So you may not be a Dalit, but you can, of course, maybe you may not have all the advantages, which of course Saruk Kai has clearly and beautifully expressed, that you need to have that lived experience to understand what and who a Dalit is. So because a non-Dalit can become a Dalit and then become a non-Dalit also, but a Dalit will always remain a Dalit. There is no escape route for a Dalit. There is no moment where he can suddenly get up in the morning and say, so I'm not a Dalit anymore. But that cannot happen for a Dalit. So you have to be a Dalit forever. But for a non-Dalit, you can switch roles. So that kind of a liberty is not there for the Dalit. So the lived experience of a Dalit is almost an irreplaceable aspect of representation. But Rege, of course, has stated that you can construct a space and understand the standpoint of the Dalit. So that is the Dalit standpoint that she is talking about. Now I move on to the Dalit authors, which is of course the focus of my presentation today. And here what you see on the screen is a young woman, an extremely feisty young woman, Amina Kandaswamy, and she is very young and she's extremely vociferous and very overt and extremely assertive through her poetry as well, and she writes in English. Right. So there are, of course, a lot of counter narratives to this, because many people don't consider her as a Dalit because she writes in English, and secondly, she's got a very privileged background. She's been to English medium schools, and she's had access to the best of institutions. So many Dalits do not think of her as a Dalit. But let me tell you, even if you get a privileged upbringing, you still are unable to shake off the baggage of the ignominy of being a Dalit. It's not easy to, just because you are rich and just because you've got best of books and best of institutions and best of clothes, that doesn't mean you stop being a Dalit. Because you see, interestingly, in our society, you might rise up the class ladder. You might become a middle class or an upper class from a lower class, but you cannot become an upper caste from a lower caste. So it's like those tight noose around. It's like a tight noose around your neck, which it's very difficult to escape. It is extremely restrictive. It's extremely constraining. So Amina Kandaswamy is somebody who has talked about her Dalit identity through her very feisty poetry, and she says that her poems are informed by a sense of gender relations that suggests that being a woman in a largely patriarchal society is another form of being lower caste. And in her poems, it's her identity as a woman that she engages with most explicitly. Uh, Kandaswamy's women, like female figures in a lot of feminist literature, makes unbridled sexuality the main weapon of their social militancy. And as you can see on the screen, this is a very famous quote of hers. So my Mahabharata moves to Las Vegas. My Ramayana is retold in 3 different ways, telling my story. Another way lets me forgive you, she wrote in the paraphrase, of course, with a lot of irony. She wrote in the preface to her collection of poems, Miss Militancy, which was published in 2010. Now, the Indian social landscape, as we've already seen, provides intertwined layers of patriarchy, caste, class, to subject Dalit women to some of the worst kinds of discrimination seen anywhere on the planet. And I just want to refer to some of the discriminations that these Dalit women go through. You have carrying of night soil, and night soil seems to, I don't know whether you know what night soil is. I also did not know about it, and this is the kind of ignorance that we have. Carrying of night soil is a euphemism for human excreta. So they do all this work, toiling as bonded laborers, dancing in temples as devdasis, working endlessly, doing the most lowly jobs as an agricultural labor, working in factories with nearly no wages, toiling in brick kilns, working as domestic helps to keep urban India's economic super engines, of course, sufficiently lubricated, facing never-ending instances of domestic and other violence, experiencing sexual exploitation of the most horrible kinds, being witch hunted and killed, facing starvation, being forced to live on a diet of rats and other inedibles. And these are, of course, only some of the aspects that regularly occur in the life of Dalit women in India. Now, Kandaswamy, as you will see, through her poems, constructs a discourse of resistance through representation. The untouchable bodies, which often bear the brunt of marginalization, speak out uninhibitedly, rewriting the Brahminized canon that we have in India. Now, in the following poem, which I'll read out, Kandaswamy speaks of the atrocity inflicted on a Dalit woman, enunciated by the victim herself. The poem questions the masks that one wears in a caste-ridden society. The landlord, who mostly wears the mask of respectability, intrepidly rips it apart to reveal the naked reality of being a rapist and a hypocrite. He ceases to be the high caste guardian of social proprieties when the untouchable woman ignites his wanton lust. Now,
I'm sorry to interrupt here, ma'am. Your presentation is not showing.
oh, it's not showing?
No.
Oh my. Should I?
Just resume. Click on the resume screen, ma'am. Present now option and then resume presentation.
Okay, just 1 second, please. Can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Just 1 minute, let me go to that slide, which was Amina Kandaswamy's slide. Fine. So, can you see it? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, it's all right.
Okay. Thank you. Right. I'll continue then. So, I was talking about this poem by Amina Kandaswamy, which is called Narration, and it goes like this: I'll weep to you about my landlord, and with my mature gestures, you will understand the torn sari, disheveled hair, stifled cries, and meek submission. I was not an untouchable then. I'll curse the skies and shout, scream to you words that incite wrath, and you will definitely know. The priest, his lecherous eyes, glances that disrobed defiled. I was not polluting at 4 feet. How can I say anything against my own man? How? So I take shelter in silence, wear it like a mask. When alone, I stumble into a flood of incoherencies. Now, the next poem that I will refer to is called One-Eyed, and it's an extremely poignant poem. It contextualizes the innocent act of a girl drinking water from a pot within the hierarchically segregated society. The pot, the glass, and the water are unaffected by the girl's caste status and admit her presence ungrudgingly. The necessity of quenching one's thirst takes priority over all other preconditions, even for the lifeless objects. However, the poet is appalled by the educated intelligentsia, teacher, doctor, school, press, who address the simple act of drinking water with vengeance. Now, the child bears the brunt of the society for this unpardonable act of transgression by losing her left eye. Once again, we find the Dalit girl's body being brutalized to enforce the inviolable codes of conduct. So, as you must have read the poem already, if I'll just read it out to you. The poet, the pot sees just another noisy child. The glass sees an eager and clumsy hand. The water sees a parched throat slaking thirst. But the teacher sees a girl breaking the rule. The doctor sees a medical emergency. This the thumbs in half, her left eye laid open but light slapped away. The price for a taste that touchable water. So nothing could have better encapsulated the idea of social distancing and physical distancing that we are experiencing today. And just because she did not follow, a child did not follow social distancing, she was blinded almost. So this is one poem which I feel it's a beautiful poignant expression of the kind of oppression that the Dalit women have to undergo. And there is this another poem which I'll quickly go through. The next morning in school, or you can just go through it, or maybe if anybody wants these poems, I could send the slides later on, or the poems later on for your reference. So I'll not go into it in much detail. I will now skip to the next author, no, before I skip to the next author, there's just one poem that I would refer to, and I'm just too tempted to refer to this one poem, which is called Mohandas Karamchand. And the poet unapologetically deconstructs the haloed reception of Gandhi as the father of the nation. Her politically charged statements unearths the myopic political underpinnings of the post-independence nation building. The political masquerades of great political leaders has been ruthlessly ripped apart by the poet. And once you listen to the poem, you will understand. Written after reading Sylvia Plath's Daddy. Generations to come will scarcely believe that such a one as this walked the earth in flesh and blood. Who, and this was said by Albert Einstein. Who, Mahatma, sorry, no. Truth, non-violence, stop it, enough, taboo. That trash is long overdue. You need a thorough review. Your tax-free salt stimulated our wounds. We gonna sue you, the Congress shoe. So this is how, this is just an excerpt from the poem, of the entire poem, and it reflects her seething anger poured out in vitriolic diatribes against the Indian society. Now, the next author is Kusum Kumar, and I refer to her work, which is called Listen Shefali. It was published in 2005, and it is a play which portrays an angry young Harijan girl named Shefali who protests against upper caste hypocrisy. It critically analyzes the notion of intercaste marriage and shows how it may not necessarily erode casteist mentality. Now, theatre becomes a dynamic medium for exploring caste politics, engendering the need to address tangled gender issues. Now, in the last few decades, the issue of caste has complicated women's movement in India, as Dalit activists who have been marginalized in the women's movement are beginning to use their caste identity in order to take their interests beyond the realm of social activism. Now, Such assertions continue to be manifested in the realm of theatre as well. However, while popular forms of Dalit theatre like Lavani have received some scholarly attention, discussions of women in Dalit theatre, in urban performance, as well as in plays by women that address Dalit issues are largely absent. Now, I will go straight to the text, and it's a significant text as it not only probes the complexities of intercaste marriage but confers agency on a Dalit woman who, having decoded the self-serving political agenda of the upper caste, categorically rejects her impending marriage to an upper caste boy. The play thus destabilizes the overarching reformist rhetoric of post-independence political optimism. Dealing with the angst of a Harijan girl, her questioning of her own self-worth, and her refusal to rely on the charity of the upper class and caste. The play was written as part of a Sahitya Academy workshop in 1975. The plot revolves around the emotional turmoil in Shefali, who is in love with Bokul. Now, Bokul is an upper caste youth and the son of a politician, which is very important again. Shefali asserts her dignity by rejecting the kindness of the more privileged. She's perceptive enough to uncover the manipulative motives of the father-son duo who want to use her as a cog in fulfilling their devious political intentions. So this was a marriage which would have given them a lot of political leverage. And that is why they wanted this marriage to take place. Now, the plot pivots on 6 scenes. Of course, I'm not getting into the details. And this is how, the play ends wherein Shefali rejects her marriage to Bokul. So it is not Bokul who says no to Shefali. It's Shefali who says no to Bokul. And remember, there is something very interesting that happens in the text is that Shefali teaches Bokul's father English. So, the language of power, which supposedly is the preserve of the upper caste and upper class, is here the preserve of a low caste woman. And finally, what happens is, of course, she faces a lot of resistance from her own family because her family wants her to marry Bokul, which will, of course, help her rise in the caste status. So if you marry a upper caste man, you invariably can climb up the caste ladder. But she rejects Bokul's proposal of marriage finally, and it's Shefali's own sister who marries Bokul in the end. Now, the play masterfully interweaves, as you can understand, class, caste, and social institutions, enabling their complex interaction. The seemingly innocuous act of entering the temple is also loaded with power politics and consciously cultivated associations. Now, I'll just quote a small portion of this text, wherein Shefali says, Bokul, if some third person considers our problem, he would find the whole matter topsy-turvy. A boy and a girl are in love. The girl's people send the proposal. The boy puts forth his demands. If the boy and his people haggle and demand it is normal. But here, all this is so unnatural. The boy is God incarnate. A young man of high caste proposes repeatedly, but the girl in tatters, a Harijan girl from a poor family. Just look at her. Instead of accepting lady luck with reverence, she kept refusing the proposal. So, finally, of course, Shefali is given the agency to reject Bokul's proposal because she has understood the ploy. And that is what cements her decision to reject the marriage proposal. This act of agency encapsulates her resistance. Shefali represents all those Dalits who stand at the insider-outsider crossroads. She resists being misappropriated by the elite, but at the same time alienates her chances of being hailed as a rebel who dared to transgress. Bhartiya says, but such resistance has severe implications for her personal relationship, something that Kumar shows with great sensitivity, both through the plot as well as through the title. Her mother frequently rebukes Shefali for rejecting the material help that they receive from the school in terms of books, stationery, and uniform. And when Shefali does not listen to mother's advice about marrying Bokul, her mother convinces the younger sister to marry Bokul, who agrees, despite being aware of Shefali's reasons for refusing the marriage. And I don't know whether this actually invokes a sense of hatred in the readers for Shefali's sister, but I would rather, empathize with her, because this unequivocal desire, within the Dalit community for assimilation in the mainstream neutralizes to a large extent the zeal for rebellion in the likes of Shefali, and probably is one of the reasons why Shefali's sister is blindly accepts the offer to marry Gokul. Uh, my next author uh, is Urmila Pawar, and her work is called Aidan. This Aidan was published in 2003 in Marathi, and it was translated by Maya Pandit. And uh, this book is, as you can understand, is about uh, the idea of weaving, which was weaving aidans or bamboo baskets, storage bins, and other household items, which were the main caste-based occupations of the Mahar community. Now, uh, there's a quotation from the text which says, "My mother used to weave aidan, the Marathi generic term for all things made from bamboo. I find that her act of weaving and my act of writing are organically linked. The weave is similar. It is the weave of pain, suffering, and agony that links us." Now, Pawar recounts 3 generations of Dalit women who fought back to surmount the burden of their caste. She says the community grew up with a sense of perpetual insecurity, fearing that they could be attacked from all 4 sides in times of conflict. That is why there has always been a tendency in our people to shrink within ourselves like a tortoise and proceed at a snail's uh, pace. And she was, she's a Dalit activist as well, and she had been awarded by the Sahitya Parishad for her works, but she declined the award, and she stated very clearly and vehemently and very unequivocally in her introduction, wherein she resisted the stereotyping of female goddesses. Now, she powerfully intercepts Hindu mythology from a feminist perspective, and she voices her angst against the legitimacy that religious scriptures gave to the violation of, exploitation of women and Dalits. Uh, Pawar's embarrassment, which is an important part of the text, and I'll quickly go through it. She had to deliver, the woven baskets to the customers, and while she was delivering those baskets, she hated this task every time she had to do it, because the people would purify it, clean it. The way we are cleaning everything nowadays, and the aidan by sprinkling water on it when they took it from her. If the home happened to belong to one of her classmates, she felt even more embarrassed by the entire procedure. Her consent for delivering the baskets could only be assured by her mother's promise of sweets and jaggery as a reward for the assigned job. With the vivid objectivity of a child's formative imagination, Pawar touches upon the intertwined ideologies of race, caste, and gender. And in school also, she had to suffer a lot of privations and oppression. Her teacher would often pick on her, force her to clean the dung in the school gardens when it was the turn of her class to do so. And all these memories of humiliation in the past flood her as she recalls the ways in which her refusal to comply elicited violent reactions from the teacher. And this is something which is beautifully manifested even in a text like Om Prakash Valmiki's Juthan. So, all the people whom you idolize, even the teachers, were complicit in this act of oppressing the low caste students. Now, moving on to the next author, it's Babitai Kamble, and the book that she wrote was The Prisons We Broke. It came out in series in 1982, and it came out in a book form in 1986. It's considered to be the first autobiography by a Dalit woman in Marathi, and it talks about it gives a graphic insight into the oppressive caste and patriarchal tenets of the Indian society. It has also talked about the internal conflicts within the Dalit community, and how the Dalits themselves need to break free from the kind of traditional mindsets that is still deeply embedded in. Uh, Now, she has talked about very significantly this practice uh, of uh, offering the girl child to the gods, which was called and they were called Muralis, and they were not like the Devdasis exactly. It is and because these girls were Devdasis were dedicated to the temple, which was a custom which is still probably a custom in many parts of India, in many parts of South India, known as the Devdasi system. Uh, in Chakravarti says that in South India, Devdasi belonged to a particular non-Brahmin caste, but not untouchable castes. So for them, there was some economic arrangement for the girl's survival, and the girl could exert her power to some extent due to her high ritual status. But on the contrary, Murali mostly took to prostitution for her survival and served clients. Okay, now moving on to the next author, Kumud Paure, and her very important text is Antasfort, which literally means outburst. She was born. She was born in the Mahar Dalit community. So we need to be aware of the different communities within the Dalit community as well. And she hailed from the Nagpur, and she was witness to the historic Diksha Bhumi conversion in 1956 in Nagpur, when lakhs embraced Buddhism with Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And she is the first woman hailing from Mahar community who completed her masters in Sanskrit literature, and yet found it very difficult to find a job. Now, coming towards the end of my presentation, I just want you to show this slide wherein you find these two very, very women who are extremely prim and proper, unlike the women that we have come across earlier on. Of course, not Amina Kandaswamy, but these are diasporic Dalit women, Yashika Dutt and Sujata Gidla. Now, so how does a Dalit woman who belongs to the diaspora, she negotiates the idea of caste and gender? See, Yashika Dutt for a long time hid her caste identity. She was, of course, she did not even have to face it, because once out of India, nobody questioned her that, oh, you are a Dutt, so do you belong to this caste? So nobody questioned her caste identity, and she was verily unaware of it, and happily blind to its ramifications for a long time. But she says in her in one of her blogs, wherein she says that it was impossible for me to move forward with this burden of my caste identity. And when she came across the suicide of Rohit Vemula, something broke inside her. She could not contain her anger anymore. Neither could she hide her caste identity. She felt that this was an escapism for her, and she had to come forth with her caste identity. So this is a beautiful book which is called Coming Out as Dalit, a memoir. And then we have another writer, Sujata Gidla. Now, Ant Among Elephants, an Untouchable Family and the Making of Modern India. And it is about, again, her life of growing up in untouchable in India. Now, see, both these narratives create an alternative space of identity construction for the Dalit narrators. The American space, because they shifted to America, space allows them to reconstruct themselves beyond the regular invasion of oppression and lack of merit discourse. Because you see, this is something which often the Dalits have to come across, that they lack merit probably. So the lack of merit discourse prevalent in India. Even the ramifications of being discovered as a Dalit are mitigated for Dutt by her location in New York. Now, Dutt states how her mother emphatically impressed on them the urgent need to excel in every possible field, because she worked for fashion magazines, speaking flawless English, having an impeccable taste for fashion, which had been the exquisite preserve of the upper caste. The book's foray into social disciplining enforced on the next generation, towing the lines of upper caste behavioral codes as a bulwark against social exclusion and intellectual invisibility, comes across as a complex study in social psychology. For Gidla, too, her diasporic identity strategically positions her to analyze and reread into the debilitating caste meta-narratives. Now, their Dalit identities, however, haunt their endeavors, and rewriting them from their present state of privilege in economic and social terms is both challenging and liberating. For that, it was like reliving a brutal reality which she had been denying, and probably could have been subject to, like Rohit Womila, had she been in India. Now, coming towards the conclusion, I just want to draw your attention to the kind of violence that Dalit women have to go through, because I thought that maybe a reality check was also needed at times. And finally, there is a bibliography. These are things which I have found from the internet. So I hope they are not understated. I'm sure there are more cases, and we don't know most of the cases most of the time. And finally, I will move towards my conclusion, wherein I would just say that the women writers that I have discussed, they have distinctive take on women's issues and show the sheer fallibility of homogenizing them. Bama unearths the discriminatory policies followed by the church and the complicit hypocrisy of Christianity. Amina Kandaswamy has been critiqued for cashing on her Dalit woman's identity, which runs counter to her privileged upbringing. Because her choice of language segregates her. The ignominy of being a Dalit often accompanies Dalits like her, irrespective of achieving economic and social upliftment. Her poems, seething with antagonism, unapologetically take on the political mainstays of Indian independence like Gandhi. Kusum Kumar critiques the diabolic caste-gender politics nexus. Urmila Pawar unravels the closed private realm of domesticity and its life-changing implications. For the diasporic Dalit woman, being a part of the diaspora may have provided a momentary succor, but it does not necessarily take away the Dalitness of their reinvented selves and the potent anger of belonging to the margins. It is the collective Dalit identity which instills a flavor of resistance in all these texts. It induces a sensitive reckoning in the reader and makes them perceptive to a world of anger, drudgery, and recuperation of self. So, thank you so much. I would like to now stop my presentation.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an insightful lecture. Now we will proceed towards the question-answer session. I have a question for Professor Gautam Kushal sir. That sir, what is the difference? Can you kindly elaborate, explain a bit the difference between the concept, the very unique concept of new woman, which you presented in Savitri, the unique approach, and the traditional view of new woman, which we find, suppose in Thomas Hardy's Youth of Steele, in the character of Sue Brighthead, or in the classical Victorian uncanny novels like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the characters of Lucy Westenra and Nina Harker, or in the character of Sarah Woodruff in the French Lieutenant's Woman. So, what is the difference, or the difference between the notion of these two view of new woman? Kindly elaborate, sir. Hello.
Well, Raj, that takes us to the tradition. And in fact, from the Victorian age, the concept of the new woman was growing. And the sense of exploration, the sense of adventure, the sense of the unforeseen, and trying things out for himself, for herself. This is a very old, 19th century, it is coming from 19th century English literature. So what is different in Savitri is that Savitri also gives it a future dimension. That is, she is not seeking a selfish liberation for the female, but a total resistance to the very powerful voice of patriarchy, and at the same time pointing to the future possibilities of a fusion, a harmony after this battle of the sexes are over. So that is the new woman as future woman. My theoretical framework was Isabel Archer from Henry James's novel of written in 1881. It was written before the term was coined by Sarah. So, and it means a lot of things. But Savitri gives it a new dimension, and taking it as the problem of living together in this planet. And Yoma is as if a representative voice of patriarchy. See the thundering voice of Yoma, and he is always saying in terms of negativity. That is what, and also temptations, because patriarchy always tempts to distract, to divert women. And many great writers have also treated their wives very wrongly, their writer wives. I won't name, there's a great Bengali writer who hasn't treated her wife very well. So Savitri takes a very large look, an integral look, which is missing in the past. It was initial, faint. They were not able to find the synthesis which is there in Savitri's resistance to the patriarchal voice. Is that okay? Is that okay? Raj?
Thank you, sir. The next question. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question is. Yes, sir. Hello. Yes, sir. It is perfectly okay. The next question is addressed to Dr. Aparna Singh, Madam. Question by Tinku Basfor. He is asking that Dalit literature is often labeled as a literature devoid of beauty.
See, this is something which.
Kindly respond.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hold on, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
are you there?
Hello.
Hello, Professor Aparna Singh.
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible. Yes, ma'am.
see-
Yes.
Yes. There has been a lot of debate.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay, so there has been a lot of. Okay, I'm
Hello, ma'am, we
speaking
can hear
now.
you.
Can you hear me now? There has been a lot of
Yes, ma'am.
debate regarding regarding Dalit aesthetics, and people have said, many have said that it is not as beautiful as the romantics, right? I mean, if you suffer day in and day out, you will not be talking about the stars and the skies and the daffodils. So it's the lived reality of the Dalits that will invariably find expression through their poetry, and this has been beautifully addressed in a book by Sharan Kumar Limbale, which is on Dalit aesthetics. So first of all, how do you define beauty is something that we need to address again, and and they say that we will not be able to write beautiful images, we'll not be able to talk about natural beauty, because that is not what we experience on a daily basis. So they are pretty okay with the fact that people don't find it beautiful, but then they think that they cannot lapse into paeans to nature, or beauty around them when they can't see it themselves. Is it okay? Hello? Hello, Raj, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you,
We
ma'am.
can hear you. Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So,
So this is
as
my answer to it. Yes.
thank you, ma'am, for such an insightful lecture. As we are running late out of time.
Hello, hello, Raj.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Raj,
Yes,
hello.
sir.
I have one question to Dr.
Yes,
Aparna
yes, sir.
Singh. Can I
Yes, sir.
ask?
Please ask.
So, ma'am, the degree of exploitation to Dalit women, do you think that it is to some extent greater than women in general?
Yes, of course, because that is what I wanted to elaborate on. Dalit women belong to the lowest rungs of the society, so they not only suffer oppression from the upper caste men, they also suffer oppression from upper caste women and the Dalit men. So they belong to the lowest rungs of the society. Say they are triply, quadruply marginalized. So their position will be different from the women in general.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Any more questions from the audience, from the listeners? Yes. So we have a question to Professor Gautam Ghoshal, sir. Question by Abid Choudhury. He is asking that, sir, can we segregate Hinduism, a religion, from Indian culture? Can we segregate? Sir, please. Hello.
Actually, there is no reason to segregate unless you go down to a perverted Hindutva, because that is giving a different impression of a heritage which was, everybody is speaking of Sanatana Dharma, nobody knows what it is. Because it belongs to humanity, it does not belong to the Hindus. But we have a kind of distorted variety of Hinduism which is termed as Hindutva. So definitely it is not spirituality. The eternal religion is only religion by name. It is a spiritual way of living, a turning, a change, a, a transformation of human consciousness so that there can be human unity from the lowest to the highest. So it is not exactly prescribed for a particular sect. It is absolutely non-sectarian. Sri Aurobindo, Sri Sri Aurobindo, hello, let me finish. Hello, Sri Aurobindo is
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please continue.
Sri Aurobindo is sidelined by the politicians just because of this, because he is not speaking of any distorted Hindutva which excludes other sects, because the term Sanatan Dharma is widely misinterpreted by the politicians of today. It is a different thing. Everybody has right to it, and it is only the name Dharma, the word Dharma is there, but it is a spiritual way of living. And the three major texts, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Gita, are not sectarian texts. Maybe the Hindus preserved them. They lived by the Indus River, so maybe it was preserved by them, but it was so long back. In Isha Upanishad, Sri Aurobindo indicates that it could be 10,000 years old that these thoughts were thought of first, then recorded much later. So it has nothing to do with orthodox religion. Sri Aurobindo calls Hindutva religionism, which is a bad thing. He differentiates between religion and religionism. Religionism is what we see as Hindutva today, and religion is the essence of spirituality, and everybody has access to it. That is why so many Christians and Muslim devotees are there for Sri Aurobindo, because they know the idea is to transform the consciousness, and there is nowhere in the Veda or the Gita or the Upanishad where the audience is a particular sect. So this is the attitude we have to change. And more Sri Aurobindo's after 1910, he stopped using the term Hindu as much as possible, only as a passing reference or giving it because he knew the term is going to be distorted very soon. And this is the difference. It is not a religion. What we see today is not, it is sectarian. What we see today, it is sectarian. It is an effort to sideline certain communities and elevate one community. But you live to transform your nature. The yoga of transformation is Sri Aurobindo's yoga. It is not Ramdev Baba's yoga. It is the yoga of transformation. It is also called synthesis yoga. It is called integral yoga, which embraces all parts of life, and it aims to correct, better, aesthetically improve, spiritually enlighten the condition of humanity with variety. And Sri Aurobindo accepts variety of worship. He says one variety of worship is absurd. So that shows that is why political parties have sidelined Sri Aurobindo, because he doesn't go with this Hindutva. Is it clear?
Yes. Thank you, sir, for your kind response. Now, next question to you from Suprabhat Chatterjee. He questions that how a faith in divinity define the future new woman along with rationality, which otherwise solely define feminism. Question to Professor Gopal Gosal, sir.
Would you clarify the question? The question is a bit hazy.
Suprabhat Chatterjee is asking you how a faith in divinity define the future new woman along with rationality which otherwise solely define feminism.
So see, there are two kinds of rationality. One is lower rationality, the logic of the brain, the logic of the simple mind. The other is a higher rationality, which is not exactly intuition, but in between intuition and rationality, there is a higher rationality which leads towards greater things. The moment you open towards faith, you enlarge, and the moment you enlarge, nobody becomes your enemy. The entire world becomes your relation. And that way, the future feminism will be the feminism of equality, the feminism of harmony, accepting the fact that there are certain things where men can contribute. They are very powerful there. We can't say women are less powerful, even physically. Even physically, certain women are more powerful than men. So this is through faith, it takes you to spirituality. The question of faith, it takes you to spirituality. I was not speaking of spirituality. I was avoiding spirituality and focusing on the general sense. And I'm speaking of higher rationality, which will change the future attitude to the problem. Higher rationality is not intuition. Ordinary rationality is just the rationality which you have as a logic in the classroom. Higher rationality is almost close to intuition. It gives you a better knowledge of truth, a perception of truth. This perception is more important than brain-clamped mentality. And this brain-clamped mentality has affected our quest for wisdom. It is only, as Blake has said in one of his poems, bones of the dead. That means, as Sri Aurobindo says, the logician thinks so accurately that he is seldom correct. The logician thinks so accurately that he is seldom correct, because there is a higher reason, and beyond that, intuition. And faith takes us to those areas. Definitely, it will be a transformation of humanity in the future. And faith is definitely a way.
Thank you, sir. Next question is addressed to Professor Aparna Singh. A question asked by Shurmishta Mukherjee. She is asking, in Burma, as we can see, the religion is not acting as a shield to protect them. What should Dalit women do in regard to draw strength to voice their suffering? A question to Aparna ma'am.
Well, Shormi, is it Shormishta? Sorry.
Yes, it is for Mr. Mukherjee.
Okay, Shormishta, that's a good question. I wish I knew the answer for it. How do you safeguard your interests? And Dalit women themselves are, struggling to find how to find safeguards, how to protect themselves, and it is pretty difficult. One of the ways in which initially it was thought that religion could give them that safety net, but increasingly they realized that religion was not necessarily the right may not necessarily give them the kind of safety net that they were looking for. And education is one of the means which Dalit women like Bama and even Sevakami and many others, they have educated themselves, and they have found that this is one of the most important and significant ways in which they can break free from the caste hierarchy. It may not, and as I said, you might rise up the class ladder, but for rising beyond the caste ladder or going up the caste ladder is almost next to impossible for most of these Dalit women. But it's not that they stop fighting, it's not that they stop uh, voicing their protests and their anger. And the way in which they can do it is by writing themselves, inscribing their identities through their books, and also by educating themselves. I think one of the ways in which they can do it is by, as I said, education, and also not segregating themselves from the Dalit community to which they belong, because most of these Dalit women, they deeply they talk about themselves in a collective way. They are not talking about themselves as individuals. So this is something that many Dalit women have done. So if one Dalit woman in a community gets educated, she kind of pulls out the others from the muck. So it's like it's a collective effort again. And if that is how things go, then probably the Dalit community may be able to fight this caste system. So it's education, it's being together, it's being loud and having a voice, and not being subjugated by the atrocities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. The next question is also addressed to you. A question by Paruma Chando. She's asking that, can these Dalit women writers who stood against the prevailing caste system as well as the patriarchal society be termed as 21st century Indian new women?
Well, Indian, of course, that is what I was trying to point out when I said that when India today, it talked about the new Indian woman, it was only covering maybe 5% or 6% of the populace. So most of the time we are ourselves invisible. The media, the public discourses are invisible to their existence. They don't exist for most of them. So I think that is again a battle that has to be won. I don't know whether they have yet found that voice and that space or not. They are fighting for it, and I'm sure in due course they will be able to assert themselves and get integrated within this whole idea of the new woman.
Yes.
And then the idea again, you see, the whole idea of the new woman itself is the idea of a new woman should not be seen as a homogeneous category again. I mean, who is a new woman? How do you define a new woman? Is something that we need to look at once again.
Definitely, it's not a unified definition.
Absolutely, yes.
It is not a unified definition because the concept includes many new roles for women.
Yes, sir.
That is the, yes, definitely I have said progressive enlightenment. So it will be a progressive enlightenment because knowledge is evolutionary. Knowledge is not an overnight process, it is evolutionary. So it is the progressive enlightenment which the Dalit women will pass through.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for your kind responses. Now, as we are running short of time, I would like to request Mona Lama, Joint Convener and Assistant Professor, Department of English, Netaji Subhash Mahavidyalaya, for kindly delivering the vote of thanks. Mona Di, over to you. Hello. Mona Di, are you present? Are you here?
Hello, Mona.
Hello. Mona Di, are you
Unmute your.
here? Unmute yourself. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I did. Okay. Now can
Yes.
you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Mona.
As we, thank you. As we come to the end of our 2 days national webinar on women, gender, nation representation from literature, culture, and society, I would like to end with a quote by the prominent writer Arundhati Roy in her recent essay, "The Pandemic is a Portal." I quote, "Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between our world and the next." Close quote. And the entire program, day 1 and day 2, has actually been an elaboration of this quote. As Professor Gautam Ghoshal sir talked about the new woman, the uh, the progressive new woman, the cosmic woman, and the future woman, the concept of the future woman. So she is someone who is going to who breaks the barriers that have chained us for centuries and will take humanity to a new world, a new reality. And as Dr. Aparna Singh in her lecture talked about giving voice not just to the essential woman, when the moment we talk about women, as Dr. Aparna Singh rightly pointed out, we talk about the essential woman, the so-called mainstream woman. We need to realize as women ourselves, not just from a male point of view, that we ourselves too need to be more sensitive, not just about our issues as mainstream women, but to realize and to be sensitive enough to the fact that there are women twice, thrice, or as Aparna ma'am was saying, quadruply marginalized. So thank you so much for the day 2 session with Sir Gautam Ghoshal sir, Professor Gautam Ghoshal, and Dr. Aparna Singh. Since we are closing the webinar today, there are a list of people who need to be thanked. First and the foremost, we need to we are extremely grateful to all the participants. Thank you so much for attending. Without you all, we could not have been able to conduct this webinar. And as on behalf of the English Department of Netaji Subhash Mahavidyalaya and the IQAC team, we would also like to thank our sir, respected principal sir, Dr. Tarun Bandopadhyay, who has always been so supportive, and not only supportive but very actively participating in these 2 days of the webinar. we would also like to extend our thanks to our technical support team from our college, Sri Partho Pratim Roy and Sri Indranil Rudra, and a special thanks to the technical support team from Malda, Mr. Bipradeep Mondal and Mr. Somnath Datta. Thank you so much, sirs, for your technical support. So with this, I would like to thank all the participants and would end it with a gentle reminder to the participants that the certificates will be mailed to your respective email address and it within 7 days, and you are requested to kindly fill the feedback forms. Thank you so much, everyone. And now I would like to ask our principal sir to say a few words before we end this webinar. Over to you, sir.
Hello, Principal Sir. Hello, Principal Sir.
Yes, Ajum.
Yes,
Yes, sir. Please conclude with your message, sir.
Oh, okay. We
Please
have
conclude
enjoyed.
this webinar with your message.
Okay. We have enjoyed a lot. We have enjoyed a very uh, lively and fruitful discussion. And I especially thank our two important speakers, two eminent speakers, Professor Gautam Ghoshal and Dr. Aparna Singh. On behalf of the college, I express my gratefulness to you, and I also express my special thanks to the participants whose participation and active support and question our session that makes the session more lively. Once again, let me convey my sincere regards and thanks to you all. Thank you. Good night to everybody. And with this, I conclude the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Very